They lived behind barbed wire in squalid shacks. The Interior Department called them labor camps. Forced to work 12 hours a day, often 7 days a week, their pay was barely half the U.S. minimum wage. They soon discovered they were essentially indentured servants, thousands of dollars in debt to the company men who had recruited them, and often forced them to sign secret shadow contracts.
They agreed they wouldn't date, they wouldn't go to churches. If they got pregnant, they'd have an abortion.
Hi, it's Josh Marshall from TPM Media. It's Tuesday, April 15th, 2008. Over the last week, we've been talking about the Marianas Island Guest Worker Program and a lot of the abuses tied to it. What you were just watching were scenes from a 2006 documentary about the Jack Abramoff scandal, and specifically here, the Marianas Island dimension of it and the conditions that the largely female guest workers lived under in the Marianas Islands. Now, this topic has come up again because there's a Republican Senate candidate in Colorado named Bob Schaefer, and he gave an interview about a week ago in which he said that the program in the Marianas Islands, which again is a territory of the United States, that it's so great that we should emulate it here on the mainland, sort of take it from the Marianas and take it national. Now, that seemed a bit odd because the Marianas program has been associated with things like forced abortion, sex trafficking, child prostitution, even what amounts to slavery in some cases. But then it came out that Schaefer had actually been on one of these Marianas Island junkets set up by Jack Abramoff to go out and supposedly do a little investigation, see if all the horror stories were true, but in fact to get basically walked around by the people who own the sweatshops and give the place a clean bill of health. Now, the local press out in Colorado has started to ask Schaefer about this, but as you can tell, he's been less than receptive to engaging in a conversation about it.
Denver Post article this morning, your connection with Jack Abramoff, is that true?
I've never met him.
You've never met Jack
guys.
Abramoff?
Appreciate it.
Now, the latest is an article that came out over the weekend in the Denver Post, which details how Schaefer was actually deeply involved in Abramoff's congressional strategy, where people, these aggrieved guest workers from the Marianas came up to Capitol Hill to testify and basically got knocked around by Schaefer and his fellow Republican members of Congress. Now, if you'd like to know more about the Abramoff scandal and the Marianas dimension of that scandal, you can see right here. Here is a documentary that Bill Moyers put together in 2006, and as you can see, it's online. You can watch it over the internet. And here we're going to show you a couple quick selections of that documentary to give you a sense of what life as a guest worker in the Marianas Islands was like.
Over the years, tens of thousands of people, primarily Chinese and mostly women, have been lured to the main island, Saipan, told they were coming to a job in America. The factories, many owned by the Chinese Communist government, manufactured clothing for some of the biggest retailers in America, from the Gap to Jones, New York, and legally labeled them made in the USA. But workers were paid a pittance. It was a very sweet deal, made possible because Congress had exempted the territory from U.S. minimum wage and immigration law. During the 1990s, pressure mounted in Washington to bring the Marianas in line with U.S. law. The factory owners convinced the government in Saipan they needed some big-time lobbying. Once again, Jack Abramoff was the man. Critics called the faraway garment industry America's biggest sweatshop. Abramoff set out to paint a different picture, promoting the Marianas to conservatives as a free market Eden for maximizing profits. He began running all-expense-paid tropical junkets for lawmakers, their staff, and conservative activists and journalists.
They were generally taken on a dog and pony show to one of the garment factories where everything had been sanitized and employers were there to monitor the workers and what they said.